Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. Drew Barry learned to read people in the foster homes. 7 different families before he aged out at 18, and each one taught him that trust was a currency spent carefully. He built his first app in a library computer lab, a logistics platform that helps small businesses optimize delivery routes. 5 years later, RouteSmart was worth $40 million, and Drew had traded his studio apartment in Queens for a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. He met Victoria Lord at a charity gala he had no business attending. She was everything he wasn't: old money, private schools, a family tree that had roots before the Civil War. Her father, Stuart Day, owned Day Properties, a real estate empire spanning 3 states. When Victoria's emerald eyes locked onto his across the champagne fountain, Drew felt something he hadn't felt since childhood: the possibility of belonging. Their wedding was in the Hamptons. Stuart had given a toast about family being everything, about how Drew was now a day in all but name. Drew's son, Mason, came 2 years later. The boy had Drew's dark hair and Victoria's sharp features. At 6 years old, Mason was curious, gentle, and loved building elaborate structures with his blocks. Drew noticed the first crack 6 months ago. He came home early from a board meeting to find Mason sitting perfectly still on the living room couch, his small hands folded in his lap. The boy's tablet lay on the coffee table, screen dark. "Hey, buddy," Drew said, loosening his tie. "What are you up to?" Mason didn't look at him. "Waiting for Mommy to say I can play." "Where is Mommy?" "Upstairs with Grandpa Stuart." Drew had frowned. Victoria knew Tuesdays were his early days. Why would Stuart be here? But when he went upstairs, he found them discussing a fundraiser for Victoria's Historical Preservation Society. Stuart clapped him on the shoulder, called him son, and everything seemed normal. Except it wasn't. Mason had started flinching when Victoria raised her voice. He'd become quieter, more withdrawn. When Drew asked Victoria about it, she laughed it off. "He's just going through a phase." "Daddy, you went through the same thing at his age, didn't you?" Stuart had nodded sagely. "Sensitive boy. He'll toughen up." Drew wanted to believe them. They were family. They knew about raising children. The Days had done it for generations. Who was he, a former foster kid, to question their methods? The business trip to Seattle was supposed to be 3 days. Drew was finalizing a merger with a cloud computing company. The night before he left, he tucked Mason into bed. The boy wrapped his small arms around Drew's neck and whispered, "Don't go, Daddy. I'll be back before you know it," Drew promised. 3 days. "We'll go to Coney Island when I get home." Mason's grip tightened. "Promise. Promise." On the flight, Drew worked through acquisition documents and barely noticed the 5 hours pass. He landed in Seattle at 2 p.m. local time, checked into the Fairmont Olympic, and was reviewing contracts when his phone rang. The screen showed SecureView Systems, the home security company that monitored their Brooklyn brownstone. "Mr. Barry, this is Janet from SecureView. Sir, we need you to access your account immediately. We flagged something on your garage camera that requires urgent attention." Drew's stomach dropped. "Is it a break-in?" "Sir, I can't describe this over the phone. Please access the feed." He opened his laptop with shaking hands. The SecureView dashboard loaded. He clicked on the garage camera, expecting to see shattered windows or masked intruders. What he saw instead turned his blood to ice. The garage had been converted into a playroom last year. Colorful foam mats covered the concrete floor. Mason's toy chest sat in the corner, and in the center of the frame, a rope hung from the exposed ceiling beam. Stuart Day held one end of that rope. Mason dangled upside down, his small ankles bound together, his face purple and streaked with tears. His mouth was open in a scream Drew couldn't hear. The garage cameras didn't record audio. Victoria stood beside her father, arms crossed. She was saying something, her face animated with anger. Then she turned, walked to the workbench, and returned with Drew's leather belt, the expensive one she'd bought him for Christmas. She handed it to Stuart. Stuart tested it against his palm, then swung. Mason's body jerked. Even without sound, Drew could see his son scream. 4 women stood in the background, phones raised. Drew recognized them, Victoria's cousins from her father's side. Anita Day, Stuart's sister's daughters. Sherry, Kelly and Christy. They were filming. One of them, Christy, was laughing. Drew watched his son vomit. Watched Stuart pull him higher. Watched Victoria check her phone with casual indifference. The timestamp read, today 6:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 23 minutes ago. Drew's hands moved before his mind caught up. He dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. It rang once. Mr. Barry. The voice was crisp, professional. This was Raphael Houston, head of a private security firm Drew had used once, 3 years ago, when a disgruntled former employee had threatened to leak proprietary code. Raphael's team had handled it quietly and efficiently. I need an extraction, Drew said. His voice sounded strange, too calm, too cold. My son, 6 years old, Brooklyn Heights. He rattled off the address. There are 6 hostels. 1 elderly male, 1 adult female for adult females. They're currently torturing him. Police. No. The word came out hard. I'm handling this personally. I need him safe, and I need them contained until I arrive. Understood. We're 17 minutes out. I'll need you to grant system access. Already done. Drew's fingers flew across the keyboard, adding Raphael's credentials to the SecureView account. You have full control of the security system. Cameras, locks, everything. There's a safe room in the basement. Get Mason there. No one else enters or leaves the property. And the hostels? Drew's jaw tightened. Restrain them. I don't care how. I'll be there in... He checked his watch, pulled up flight options on his phone. 2 hours, 17 minutes. He hung up and called the hotel desk. This is room 1847. I need a car to Boeing Field immediately. I don't care what it costs. 12 minutes later, Drew was in the back of a Mercedes, watching Seattle's skyline blur past. His phone rang. Raphael. We're inside. Subject is secure. He's terrified, but physically intact. Current injuries appear to be bruising and welts. The hostels are vocal. I don't give a damn what they're saying. Put them in the living room. Zip ties, no phones. I want them exactly where they are when I arrive. Copy that. Drew ended the call and stared at his phone. The photo on his lock screen showed Mason grinning gap-toothed, holding up a sandcastle they'd built last summer. His hand was shaking now, not from fear, from rage so pure it felt like touching a live wire. He'd given Victoria everything. He'd welcomed Stuart into their lives, deferred to him on parenting decisions, let the Day family's traditions override his instincts. And they'd used that trust to torture his son. The Mercedes pulled up to a sleek Gulfstream G650. Drew climbed the stairs without looking back. The pilot, a woman with sharp eyes and gray-streaked hair, nodded once. Mr. Barry, we're filed for Teterboro. 2 hours, 5 minutes flight time. I understand time is critical. Every second matters. The jet's engines were already running. Mason was in the basement safe room when Drew landed. Raphael met him at the door, his expression carefully neutral. The man was built like a linebacker, with close-crop hair and a scar running through his left eyebrow. Your son's with my medic. No broken bones. Extensive bruising across his back, legs, and arms. Belt welts. Rope burns on his ankles. Signs of previous abuse. Healed bruises, old scars. This wasn't the first time. Drew's vision went red at the edges. Show me. The living room looked like a crime scene. Stuart sat on the Italian leather sofa, zip-tied hands behind his back. Victoria was beside him, her perfect composure finally cracked. Mascara streaked her face. The 4 cousins were arranged on chairs, all restrained, all silent now. Stuart's voice boomed. Drew, thank God you're here. This is insane. These thugs broke into our home. Drew walked past him without a word. He went to the basement stairs. Mason was wrapped in a thermal blanket, perched on the edge of a cot. A woman in tactical gear. The medic stepped back as Drew approached. His son's eyes were huge, ringed with red. Daddy. Drew knelt and pulled Mason into his arms, careful of the bruises. The boy started to cry. Not the hysterical sobs from the video, but quiet, broken sounds that hurt worse than screaming. I'm here, Drew whispered. I'm here, and you're safe. I promise you, Mason. You're safe now. Mason buried his face in Drew's shoulder. I tried to be good. I tried so hard. You're good. You're perfect, and none of this was your fault. He held his son until the crying stopped, until Mason's breathing evened out. The medic approached quietly. He should be examined at a hospital, Mr. Barry. Documented injuries. Not yet. Drew looked up. Raphael, I need you to keep them here for 72 hours. Can you do that? Raphael raised an eyebrow. That's kidnapping, Mr. Barry. I know exactly what it is. Can you do it? A pause. Then, the property has excellent soundproofing. My team can maintain a perimeter. 72 hours, no police involvement. After that, we were never here. Drew stood, Mason clinging to him. Good. And Raphael? They don't eat unless I say so. They don't sleep unless I say so. They get exactly what they gave my son. Victoria's voice cut through the house. Drew, please. This is a misunderstanding. Drew didn't answer. He carried Mason upstairs to the master bedroom, his and Victoria's room. He locked the door and called Dr. Johanna Scott, Mason's pediatrician. Dr. Scott, this is Drew Barry. I need you at my house immediately. Mason's been hurt. I have evidence of sustained abuse, and I need it documented tonight. To her credit, Dr. Scott didn't waste time with questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Drew set Mason down on the bed gently. Buddy, I need you to tell me everything. How long has Grandpa Stewart been doing this? Mason's lower lip trembled. Since you started traveling more. For work. For months. Drew had expanded RouteSmart to 3 new markets. He'd been gone at least once a week. What would happen when I left? Mommy would call Grandpa. He'd come over with Aunt Anita and the cousins. They'd say I was being bad, that I needed discipline. Mason's voice dropped to a whisper. Grandpa said you were too soft. That real day men were tough. You're not a day, Drew said quietly. You're a Barry. Grandpa said that's why I needed fixing. The doorbell rang. Drew let Raphael handle it while he stayed with Mason. Dr. Scott arrived with her medical bag and a grim expression. She examined Mason methodically, documenting every bruise, every welt, every rope burn. When she photographed the old scars, faded marks on Mason's ribs that Drew had never noticed, her hand shook slightly. Mr. Barry, she said when they stepped into the hallway, I'm legally obligated to report this. I know, but I'm asking you to give me 48 hours first. That's not. Please. Drew met her eyes. I'm not asking you to hide it. I'm asking you to let me handle this my way first. Then you can report it, testify, whatever you need to do. But give me 2 days. Dr. Scott studied him for a long moment. 48 hours. Not a minute more. And if that child needs hospital care, then you'll take him. I won't stop you. She left him with copies of everything she'd documented. Drew locked them in his home safe, then returned to Mason. The boy had finally fallen asleep, exhausted. Drew sat beside him, watching his small chest rise and fall, and let himself think. Victoria came from money, but the days weren't just rich, they were legacy. Stewart's great-grandfather had built day properties from nothing, back when Brooklyn was still farmland. Every generation since had added to it. They had rules, traditions, a code of behavior that went back 100 years. Drew had never fit that code. He was new money, no pedigree, no family history. They'd accepted him because Victoria wanted him, but they'd never truly welcomed him. And Mason, half Barry, was even worse in their eyes. An imperfect heir to the Day legacy. Drew's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Video files uploaded to secure server. Access code, Mason 2024. He logged in and found dozens of videos. Months of footage. The cousins had been documenting everything, storing it in a private cloud drive. Drew forced himself to watch. In one video, Stewart lectured Mason about Day family standards while the boy stood at attention, arms at his sides, tears streaming down his face. In another, Victoria corrected Mason's table manners by dumping his dinner plate on the floor and making him eat from it like an animal while her cousins laughed. In a third, they locked him in the dark garage for hours as punishment for spilling juice. The videos were labeled, organized by date, tagged with descriptions, teaching respect, discipline session, correction for lying. They'd been systematic about it, calculated. This wasn't abuse born from anger or stress. This was a deliberate campaign to break his son. Drew closed the laptop before he put his fist through the screen. Downstairs, Raphael had moved the captives to separate rooms. Drew found Stuart in the study, still zip-tied, but now seated in Drew's own desk chair. "You're making a terrible mistake," Stuart said. His voice carried the same authoritative boom it always did. "I'm trying to help your boy. You're too permissive, Drew. A child needs structure, discipline. You hung him from the ceiling by his ankles. I did what my father did to me, what his father did to him. It's how men learn strength." Drew leaned against the desk. "You're not his father. I am. And look how soft you're raising him. The boy cries when you raise your voice. He'll never survive in the real world. He's 6 years old." "Exactly. This is when character is built." Stuart's face reddened. "I've watched you coddle him for years. Victoria and I agreed something had to be done. We were doing you a favor." Drew's laugh was cold. "A favor? You came from nothing. You don't understand how to raise a child of quality. We were teaching him what you couldn't. You were torturing him. We were making him strong." Drew pushed off the desk and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. "Tell me something, Stuart. Did your father hang you upside down while people filmed it for entertainment?" Silence. "Did your mother hand him the belt with a smile? Did your cousins laugh while you vomited from fear?" "This is different." "No," Drew said quietly. "It's not discipline. It's not tradition. It's cruelty. And you enjoyed it." He left Stuart sputtering and found Victoria in the dining room. She looked small without her usual confidence, hunched in a chair with her designer dress rumpled. "Drew, please listen. How long have you hated him?" Victoria blinked. "What? I don't hate Mason. I love him." "Don't." Drew's voice was flat. "I've seen the videos, Victoria. All of them. I watched you dump his dinner on the floor. I watched you hand your father a belt and tell him to use the thicker one. That's not love." Her facade cracked further. "You don't understand. Daddy said—" "I don't care what Daddy said. You're his mother. You were supposed to protect him." "I was protecting him from becoming weak like—" She stopped. "Like me," Drew finished. "That's what this is about. You married beneath yourself, and now you're embarrassed? So you decided to beat it out of our son." Victoria's face hardened. "The Day family has standards, requirements. Mason needed to meet them. He's 6, and already showing your influence, your softness, your—" She waved her hand dismissively. "Foster home mentality. Do you know what the family says about you, Drew? They call you Victoria's experiment. They take bets on how long before you embarrass us publicly." There it was, the truth she'd hidden behind smiles and charitable gallus. Drew nodded slowly. "Okay, thank you for being honest. What are you going to do?" "I haven't decided yet." He walked out, leaving her calling after him. Raphael was waiting in the hallway. "Mr. Barry, the cousins are asking for lawyers. They can ask all they want. What did you find out about them?" Raphael consulted his tablet. Anita Day, 52, Stuart's niece. Divorced, lives off a trust fund. Sherry Day, 28, aspiring influencer, 47,000 Instagram followers. Kelly Day, 31, works for Day Properties in Community Relations, which seems to mean she plans parties. Christy Day, 25, unemployed, recently cut off from her trust fund for undisclosed reasons. All 4 live in properties owned by Stuart or Day Properties LLC. So they're dependent on him. Completely. Without Stuart's goodwill, they'd have nothing. Drew smiled without humor. Good to know. He spent the rest of the night in Mason's room, watching his son sleep and planning. By sunrise, he had the outline of something that felt right. Not justice. The legal system would call it revenge. But Drew had learned in foster care that sometimes the world didn't give you justice. Sometimes you had to make your own. Dr. Scott returned in the morning with a colleague, a child psychologist named Dr. Alfred Moss. They spent 2 hours with Mason, then met with Drew privately. "Your son has been experiencing severe psychological abuse for approximately 4 months, Dr. Moss said. Physical abuse for at least 3. He shows signs of complex trauma, hypervigilance, flinching responses, dissociative episodes. He's been conditioned to believe he's inherently flawed and deserves punishment. Can he recover? With proper therapy and a safe environment, yes. Children are remarkably resilient. But Mr. Barry," Dr. Moss leaned forward, "he can't be around those people ever again. Not his mother, Not his grandfather, none of them. The damage they've done runs deep. Drew nodded. He'd already known that. Thank you, doctor. When they left, he returned to the basement where Raphael's team had set up a command center. Monitors showed feeds from every room where the captives were held. Drew watched Stuart pace his room like a caged animal. Watched Victoria stare at the wall. Watched the cousins huddle together, whispering, "Raphael, I need you to find everything about Stuart Day's business. Every deal, every property, every financial relationship. And I need it by tonight." That's a lot of data. You told me once your team could crack a bank security in 6 hours. This is a real estate company. I'm betting their cybersecurity is worse. Raphael grinned. I'll have it in 4. Drew made his first call at noon. Tony, it's Drew Barry. I need a favor. Tony Pena was a federal prosecutor Drew had met through business channels. They'd bonded over their shared experience in the foster system. Drew, good to hear from you. What's up? Hypothetically, if someone had video evidence of child abuse, what would be the best way to ensure the abusers faced maximum consequences? A long pause. This isn't hypothetical, is it? No. Are we talking about Mason? Yes. Tony's voice went hard. What do you need? Drew laid it out carefully. The videos, the medical documentation, the systematic nature of the abuse. Tony listened without interrupting. Okay, Tony said finally. Here's what you do. You document everything, which it sounds like you have. You get a child welfare attorney. You file for emergency custody and a restraining order. And you let the system work. The system moves slowly. Drew, I know that tone. Whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking, Drew said carefully, that Stuart Day has political connections. I'm thinking Day Properties donates heavily to judges' campaigns. I'm thinking the system might not work as well for me as it would for them. You might be right, but vigilante justice will land you in prison. I'm not planning anything illegal, Tony. I just want to make sure they face consequences. Drew, thanks for the advice. I'll be in touch. He hung up before Tony could argue further. His phone buzzed immediately with a text from Raphael. Got everything. You need to see this. Drew went to the basement. Raphael had spread financial documents across a table like a war map. Stuart Day is leveraged to hell, Raphael said. Day Properties looks solid from the outside, but it's built on debt. He's been borrowing against properties to fund new developments. 3 of his major projects are behind schedule and over budget. He's 60 days from a margin call that would collapse the whole empire. How is he hiding it? Creative accounting and political favors. He's got judges, city councilors, and a state senator in his pocket. They've been running interference, delaying audits, approving variances that shouldn't be approved. Drew studied the documents. What would happen if this went public? His creditors would panic. The banks would call their loans. Day Properties would be forced into bankruptcy within a week. And Stuart, personally? He's personally guaranteed half these loans. He'd lose everything. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, the place in the Hamptons, the Miami condo. All of it. Drew smiled coldly. Good. What about Victoria? Prenup protects her assets, technically. But most of her money is in Day Properties stock and a trust fund controlled by Stuart. If the company collapses, so does her wealth. And the cousins? Same situation. They're all funded by Stuart's generosity. No company, no money. Drew's plan clicked into place. Raphael, I need you to leak this to 3 specific journalists. Financial reporters, the kind who love a corruption story. But make it look like it came from inside Day Properties, a whistleblower, not me. What about your son? Your divorce. That's phase 2. First, I take away their power. Then I take away their freedom. By midnight, the first articles started dropping. Day Properties empire built on fraud? Read the headline in the New York Financial Journal. The piece laid out the questionable loans, the political connections, the behind-schedule developments. By morning, 3 more outlets had picked it up. Drew watched Stuart's reaction on the monitors. The old man went from angry to pale to panicking in the span of an hour. His phone, which Raphael's team had cloned, lit up with calls from creditors, investors, lawyers. Victoria was quieter. She sat in her assigned room, staring at nothing, occasionally wiping her eyes. Drew felt nothing watching her cry. She'd handed her father a belt while their son screamed. The cousins were louder. Anita kept demanding her lawyer. Sherry was crying about her Instagram followers finding out. Kelly and Christy huddled together, whispering about what this meant for their allowances. None of them asked about Mason. Drew returned to his son's room. Mason was awake, building a structure with his blocks, something with towers and walls. "What are you making, buddy?" "A castle. So nobody can get in." Drew's heart cracked a little more. He sat down on the floor beside Mason. "You know what? That's a really good idea. Everyone needs a safe castle. Daddy, are Grandpa Stewart and Mommy going to come back?" Drew chose his words carefully. "No, Mason. They're never going to hurt you again. I promise. But what if they try? Then I'll stop them. That's my job, to keep you safe. And I'm really good at my job." Mason considered this, then added another block to his castle wall. "Okay." Dr. Scott had left instructions for trauma-informed care. Consistency, safety, validation. Drew could do that. He'd learned it the hard way, in foster homes where nobody cared. He knew what Mason needed because he needed it himself once. His phone rang. Tony Pena. "Drew, what did you do?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The Day Properties expose." "That was you. That was good journalism." "Drew." "Tony, I need a favor. A real one this time. I need the best family law attorney in New York. Someone who's not afraid of going after powerful families." A sigh. "I know someone. Janine McCann. She's a pit bull. Represented a client against the Rothstein family last year and won full custody plus a restraining order. Can you make an introduction? I'll text you her number. But Drew, be smart about this. Don't give them ammunition. I'm always smart." He hung up and texted Janine McCann. She responded within minutes. "Can meet tomorrow 9 a.m. Bring everything." Drew looked at Raphael. "We're at the 48-hour mark. Time to let Dr. Scott make her report. And our guests. Keep them here until I say otherwise. They're not going anywhere." Janine McCann was exactly what Tony had promised. Sharp, direct, and utterly unimpressed by the Day family name. She reviewed Drew's evidence in her office, occasionally making notes, her expression growing darker. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever seen," she said finally. "The videos alone would be enough. Add the medical documentation, the psychologist's evaluation, and the pattern of behavior. You'll get full custody and a permanent restraining order. The only question is whether Victoria faces criminal charges." "What about Stewart and the cousins?" "Absolutely criminal charges. Child endangerment at minimum, possibly assault. The DA will want this case. It's high profile and the evidence is airtight." "How long?" "Emergency custody hearing can be as soon as tomorrow. I'll file this afternoon. Restraining orders concurrent with that. Criminal charges will take longer. DA has to build the case, but I'd say 2 weeks maximum." Drew nodded. "Do it. And Janine? I want Victoria to have nothing. Not custody, not visitation, nothing. Based on this evidence, that won't be a problem. But Drew," she leaned forward, "you need to be careful. The Days are connected. They'll fight dirty. So will I." He left her office and drove back to Brooklyn Heights. The protesters had already started gathering. Word had spread about the abuse allegations, combined with the financial scandal. News vans lined the street. Raphael met him at the door. "Media circus is getting worse. You want me to clear them out?" "No. Let them watch. The Days built their empire on reputation. Time to watch it burn." Drew went inside and found Mason in the kitchen with a medic. The boy was eating pancakes, his legs swinging under the table. When he saw Drew, his face lit up. "Daddy, Miss Sarah made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." "I can see that. Did you save me any?" "Only the T-Rex. The rest were too good." Drew ruffled his son's hair and felt something loosen in his chest. Mason was smiling. After everything, the kid could still smile. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. SD." Drew smiled and texted back. "See you in court." Stewart Day's response was immediate. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Drew replied, "Neither do you." He blocked the number and pocketed his phone. Raphael appeared in the doorway. "Judge granted the emergency hearing. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Janine says she's got a friendly judge, someone the Days haven't bought yet." "Good. What about the criminal investigation?" DA's office is opening a case. They want to interview Mason, but Dr. Moss said we should wait a few more days. Let him stabilize first. Drew nodded. Everything was moving. The machine he'd set in motion couldn't be stopped now. That night, Stuart Day's mugshot hit the news. The DA had filed charges faster than expected. Child endangerment, assault, conspiracy. Victoria was charged as an accessory. The cousins were brought in for questioning. Drew watched the news with Mason asleep against his shoulder. The anchor was laying out the allegations in stark detail. Day property stock had collapsed. Creditors were filing lawsuits. The empire was crumbling in real time. His phone rang. A blocked number. He answered. "You think you've won." Victoria's voice was sharp with venom. "You've destroyed my family. My father is ruined. But you'll never keep Mason. The courts will see you for what you are, a vengeful, vindictive man who kidnapped his own wife." "I didn't kidnap anyone. I protected my son from his abusers." "There's a difference. The Days have power you can't imagine." "Connections." "Had," Drew corrected. Past tense. "Those connections disappear when the money runs out." "And Victoria? Your money is gone. Day Properties is bankrupt. Stewart's assets are frozen. Every judge and politician he bought is running from the association. You're alone now." Silence. Then, quietly, "I did what I thought was right. You tortured our son. I tried to make him strong. He was already strong. Strong enough to survive you." Drew hung up and blocked that number two. He carried Mason to bed, tucked him in, and sat in the chair by the window. Outside, the news vans were still there, cameras pointed at the house like accusatory eyes. This was his castle now, his walls, and nobody was getting in. The hearing the next day was swift and decisive. Janine presented the videos, the medical reports, the psychological evaluation. Victoria's lawyer, a court-appointed attorney, since she could no longer afford private counsel, tried to argue that Drew had overreacted, that the Day family's methods were traditional discipline. The judge watched exactly 30 seconds of one video before cutting the lawyer off. "Counselor, if you call hanging a 6-year-old child upside down while beating him with a belt traditional discipline one more time, I'll hold you in contempt." Mr. Berry is awarded full legal and physical custody. Ms. Berry is denied all visitation pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. Restraining orders are granted against Ms. Victoria Berry, Mr. Stuart Day, and he consulted his notes, Anita Day, Sherry Day, Kelly Day, and Christy Day. None of the named parties may come within 500 feet of the minor child or Mr. Berry. This order is permanent pending further court action. The gavel came down. Drew walked out of the courthouse with Mason's hand in his, Janine beside him, and Raphael's team providing a buffer against the reporters. Victoria stood on the courthouse steps with her lawyer, looking lost. Stuart was in a holding cell downtown, bail set at $2 million. He couldn't make it. All his assets were frozen or seized. The cousins were facing their own legal troubles. Sherry's Instagram followers had turned on her when the videos leaked. She'd lost all her sponsorships. Kelly had been fired from Day Properties, which was now in receivership. Christy and Anita were living in a motel, their brownstones seized by creditors. Everything they'd built on cruelty was gone. But Drew wasn't satisfied yet. This was justice, yes, but it wasn't enough. 3 weeks later, Drew sat in his study with a visitor. Brandon Norton was a documentary filmmaker who'd reached out after seeing the news coverage. He had a reputation for hard-hitting exposés on abuse and corruption. "I want to tell Mason's story," Brandon said. "Not exploitatively. I want to show how systemic abuse happens in families with power and money. How people get away with it because of who they know. Will help other kids. I think it could. Put pressure on courts, on child protective services. Show people that abuse happens at every economic level." Drew considered. "I'd need editorial control. Mason's face stays hidden, his name stays private. The focus stays on the adults." "Done. And all proceeds go to a foundation I'm setting up for kids in foster care and abuse situations. Legal defense funds, therapy, housing." Brandon extended his hand. "You've got a deal." The documentary dropped 6 months later. Behind Day's Doors became a cultural phenomenon. It combined the videos, interviews with experts, and Drew's own testimony about missing the signs. It ended with updated information. Stuart Day, convicted on all counts, sentenced to 15 years. Victoria Berry convicted as an accessory, 3 years probation and permanent loss of custody. The cousins pleaded to lesser charges and received probation. Day Properties was dissolved. The assets were sold to pay creditors. The Day family name, once synonymous with power and prestige, became shorthand for abuse hidden behind wealth. Drew used a share of RouteSmart's profits to fund the Mason Berry Foundation. In the first year, they helped 200 children escape abusive situations and provided therapy for 500 more. Mason, now 7, was in therapy twice a week with Dr. Moss. The nightmares were less frequent. The flinching had stopped. He was learning to be a kid again, messy, loud, joyful. One evening, Drew found him in the living room, building with his blocks. The structure wasn't a castle anymore. It was open, sprawling, with bridges connecting different sections. "What are you making, buddy?" "A city, where everyone can visit." Drew smiled and sat down beside his son. "That sounds perfect." Mason added another block, then looked up at his father. "Daddy, are we safe now?" "Yeah, buddy, we're safe." And for the first time since that phone call from the security company, Drew believed it. The walls of his castle could come down. The doors could open. Because the real strength wasn't in keeping the world out, it was in knowing when to let the right people in. Mason leaned against his shoulder, and Drew wrapped an arm around him. Outside, the Brooklyn Heights brownstone stood solid and quiet. No news vans, no protesters. Just a home where father and son were learning to live again. The days had tried to break them. Instead, they'd broken themselves against Drew's determination to protect what mattered most. And in the ruins of their empire, something better had grown. A foundation built not on power and prestige, but on protecting children like Mason who couldn't protect themselves. That felt like victory. That felt like home. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.